2. We're meeting at Austin Energy headquarters and online via the WebEx platform provided by the City of Austin. Present are Commissioners Jones, Gravaniak, Hilliard, Rosanak, Sokolik, and Jackson. Commissioner Rookie will be joining us shortly. The first item on the agenda is public communications. This is an opportunity for anyone to provide up to 3 minutes of testimony on any topics related to the Miller development, which is not on today's agenda. And I believe Ms. Ani Colt is signed up for 3 minutes of testimony. Ani, we look forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you. It's nice to be back.
Good to be seen.
Good evening. Thanks for the time. Some of you, but maybe not all of you, know of the project that we've been dreaming, we, a group of Miller residents, for the intersection at 51st and Berkman with Barbara Jordan. It's currently empty. We developed something called a Wonderment Central. It's an amazing dream. And just like Miller was dreamed by the residents who lived around the property of the old airport, this is dreamed by the residents of Miller. We gave a wonderful presentation at Ascension Seton in their big room in January, just as the COVID was starting. And we've talked to Greg Weaver many times and Catellus, and then it went to sleep with the COVID. After much soul searching and being 2 years older and so forth, we're gearing up to go for it again. And this time we really want to gain community involvement and support before we get going. To do that, I'm requesting that we get on your agenda so we can give you a real presentation with those slides that Kat was just saying, you've got to use them, they're so good. She was there when we presented in January of 2020. So that's my request. Are there any questions?
Commissioners, any questions for Ani at this time? Yes, Rick.
Do you have some idea about the time that you would like, and how much time?
Thank you for asking that. It would be great if we could have 30 minutes. We could probably get it down to 20, but I believe you're going to want to ask questions.
Any other questions for Ani? Ani, thank you very much, and I can assure you we will be following up, and we'll be working with the staff to follow up with you between now and the September meeting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Alrighty, Commissioners, as you may have noted, our agenda has been altered slightly from past agendas to be consistent with the directions we received from the City Clerk's office. Therefore, the next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our June 14th meeting. And I hope you've had an opportunity to look at the copy of the minutes that were provided to you. Are there any corrections, edits, or other alterations that need to be made to the June meeting minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the June meeting minutes as written? Kathy is made, yes. Is there a second? Second, there are several seconds. Are there any other questions? Those in favor of approval of the June 14th meeting minutes, please indicate by saying aye. 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 Those opposed? The June meeting minutes are approved. We'll now move on to a couple of discussion items. As you may have noted, most of the items on this month's agenda are park related. The first presentation will be a update on the Zach Scott Greenway, provided by representatives from RVI, and I believe Chris Laylock will be making that presentation online, and I'm not sure where we'll see. I assume we'll see him on the screen in front of us.
Yes, the presentation will be up, and then he'll be speaking virtually.
Okay.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, well, we can hear you. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, and it's good to talk to everybody again. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but after a couple of years of being very diligent, I finally came down with COVID myself, so I am at home right now. This is the Zach Scott Greenway, which is the last of the greenways that surrounds Miller on the on almost all sides except for the northeast. This greenway, when we originally did this, the kind of the mandate that had come down on us was that, as you know, most of the homes in Miller have very small lawns or very small open space. That was the real requirement, was that we have as much open space as possible. So you'll see when we show you the plans of this that it's very light on the land. It's also kind of an interesting site in that we are at the corner of Tillman and Zach Scott and Artilly and Zach Scott, and the site wraps around the new school site. So it's got some really sort of intricate spots to it. The team on this is, of course, ourselves doing the landscape architecture, Studio 8, who is doing the architecture, and they have also done the actually this entire team, Stantec and AEC, are the civil engineers and structural engineers who also did the southeast greenway. So that you'll notice the pavilions in this site are somewhat similar to the ones at the southeast greenway, as well as Studio 8 did the restroom buildings at Philomena Park, which is now just St. Andrews Park. There are 4 slides for architecture at the end of this, and I'm going to fumble through ever so slightly because I'm used to Jonathan Pearson at Studio 8 making that presentation, but they're great slides and you'll see them shortly. So if we go to the next slide, you can see the overall plan. So you can see that how kind of oddly shaped this property is. It's not without its benefits, though. We kind of subdivided it into 3 different areas. You can see the area that's to the lower left, that's at the corner of Zach Scott and Tilly. That's a very active spot that is tightly up against the school, but also has the most prominent location at the corner of those 2 main streets. There's the side to the east of that, which is the east of that, the football field. That's really mainly a large open space, but what's important about it is a continuation of the hike and bike trail that runs all the way around Miller. So if you were to look at that, where it says Austin Shines, to the south and east of there is the Southeast Greenway, and that is where the connection of the trail comes from. The trail runs up along the boundary between the school. It's kind of squeezed in, and that's sort of our 3rd area, which is really more focused on the trail. I'm going to stay on this slide for a second, but on the next slide there is kind of a zoom in on the active area on the lower left. The trail itself, we kind of divided it up into 3 little areas. On the upper left off of Tilly Street, there's a really long, narrow corridor. We've got a nice long line of regularly spaced trees that kind of develops a rhythm that when we get to the end, we're right, good job, who's ever using the cursor, opens up into an open meadow area and then narrows back down again with an overlook over the football field until it opens up and wraps around what is the largest field at Miller on the east side. None of our fields that we have here are specific to any sport. Everything is just trying to create as much open space as possible. I will say that the field on the right side on this area is 200 by 300, which is more than large enough for a soccer game or a football game. And then there's buffer space around that as well. We've lined the trail in that area with a whole row of trees that will change from a lower height to a higher height. So we have some punctuation, and there are also some benches along that route. On the next slide, and I wanted to point out, by the way, the facilities that are in the school, you can see that where the school site is up above. There's also a parking lot that will be used by this area. There is a football field to the right, and you will notice there's a kind of a little, an area that's carved out, that looks like it's carved out of our site, our tennis courts that are provided by the school and are currently under construction. Okay, on the next slide is our zoom in. So here's the enlargement of this area. Basically, all we have here is a basketball court, as well as originally was going to be one shade pavilion, but we've actually stretched that into two. We've done that by trying to make as little little cost as possible in the structure that it's not sort of an elaborate shade structure. These are very simplistic, so it allowed us to have two. The original plans or concepts behind this had the fields kind of moved over and pushed over closer to the tennis court. There's kind of an odd grading problem over near the tennis court. So what we did is we moved everything to the west and then provided a space should Miller want to come in the future and develop another basketball court that would fit to the east of that area. Currently, we're seeing that as more of a private area off of the pavilion, which we've created a pad to that, so that we can have kind of two things happening at once. If we have maybe older kids playing basketball, maybe parents in the center pavilion, and younger kids playing on the east side. The southern pavilion is really more of an overlook. There's a grade change at that pavilion of a few feet that drops down to the open field below that. That field as well has another grade change on the south side in order to make that kind of work and not have too much of a slope for it if there's ball play that's happening out there. We're trying to use materials that we've used in all three of the previous greenways from the Lake Park, the Southwest Greenway, and the Southeast Greenway. If you go to the next slide, I believe is the one I want to see. Yeah, so we're going to use, so the seating is very informal, kind of stuff that's tough. Within the two shade pavilions, we're using this Pecos block, which is the same material that's been used as the big retaining wall outside of Miller Central in the Lake Park. We're also going to have a number of areas that are native plant materials within the same native prairie mixes that are in the Southwest Greenway. We also have the shade structures that are similar to the Southeast Greenway that Studio 8 designed. You can see that all materials on here are standard Miller materials and Miller furnishings. As well, there's a large wall on this southwest side of this park to do some retaining, and we're just going to continue a wall that's currently existing along Zach Scott using that same material. You go to the next slide. This is our plant material sheet. Again, we're using all native plant material. There is one question about the Weesatch that's on there. I think it's going to be just fine on here. We're keeping it far away from any of the trails because it can be thorny. But everything on our plant list comes from the Austin Grow Green Guide. You will also find, if you look back at the plans, that we have tried to limit the actual amount of shrub beds on this site to the bare minimum. Most of this site is either an open field that is mowed on a regular basis, or it's a native prairie mix, which is only mowed on a certain cycle, to try to keep down the maintenance. Otherwise, the shrub beds are really one intersection plus the area right around the shade structure. Okay, the next couple of slides are the architecture, and I'm going to do my best on these. If you go to the next one. So this is an overall showing the materials for the architecture. You can see that they're using a steel tube framing that's painted white. It's as simple as that. It has a solid shade center section to both of the pavilions. You can see those on the right-hand side. We did do a shade study, which I'll show you at the end. Again, the seating is purely the Pecos stone seating. The field structure that's on the south side that overlooks the site is we're keeping that open so that it can be used for multi-purpose. You have multi-purpose uses such as coming out there for a picnic or a yoga site or for CrossFit or whatever needs to happen out in the park. If you go to the next slide, this I always stumble on, I'm not exactly sure why he always shows this slide, but there are two things to notice on this one, is that we do have a connection all the way across from the parking lot all the way across the park. So when you get out of your car and you start walking down this sidewalk, we want to have this structured view that is not only aligned with the two pavilions, it also is aligned with these intermediate ribbed posts. Those posts also have lights in them, so that whole central area is lit up. So there's a security while people are playing basketball. As well, the view through all the way through the structures ends at we're bringing in a larger tree at the very end that kind of ends our view at the other end of the field. As well, we're trying to we're repeating those ribs, but also reinforcing that repetition with the cedar elms that we're planting down the center. The cedar elms are native, of course. They tend to grow a little bit taller than they do wide. In a really good year, they turn a really vibrant yellow, so that it'll be a really nice show. At certain times, in certain years, this area will kind of be a nice highlight. On the next slide. This is just some elevation, so you can see that repetition, that long repetition of the repeating vertical structures as well as the canopies in the middle. It all kind of blends together, and the trees themselves kind of hide that whole structure right there. The next one, I believe, is the shade. Yeah, and this last one here, this is our last slide. This is just showing, kind of proving up how the shade is going to work. Obviously, in times of like the winter solstice is when we need it less, and you can see that shade is far away from the pavilion. But the summer solstice, all the way to the right side of this slide, you can see that the shade is really concentrated right around those pavilions. And that's my presentation.
Commissioners, do you have questions for Chris? Yes, Kristen.
Yeah, Chris, this is Commissioner Jackson. I was curious, and you may not be there yet, but what percentage slope are you looking at for kind of the larger green areas that can be activated for sports such as soccer and football, etc.?
Sure, we made those two big open areas at 2% or less.
Great, thanks.
That's 1 in 50. It's kind of standard for sports fields. Normally you want to crowd down the middle, but because how these were working and the drainage works, we drain all the way across them. And typically in our landscape, 2% is the minimum you want to slope for drainage as well. So it's sort of standard.
Commissioners, other questions? Yes, Corky.
Hi, Chris, Corky Hilliard. Thank you very much. This is really interesting. Could you go back to the first, I think the second slide, please? One more back, couple more back. Yeah. The large green area, just on the lower, yeah, right there, the lower right-hand corner.
Mm-hmm.
Right-hand corner.
Yeah, 300 by 150.
Yeah, the big space. So is that available for use by the school?
I don't know if that is something that has been determined with Miller. I think, Brian, you might be able to answer that question better than I can.
Okay, that was really the question I had. And the other question was, are the black lines just boundaries of the school? Is that just a demarcation line, those black dashes?
The black dash is the actual, that's actually the boundary of our site.
Our side, it's not fencing or anything like that, it's just showing.
No, it is not. It is no, there's not a fence between the school and our site.
I didn't think there was, I was just hoping that was that way. Okay, that's it, thank you.
Yeah, you are correct. Yeah, it is very much meant that as everything is pervious there, or, permeable, that kids are coming in and out of there. In fact, the area that says open meadow, we're kind of hoping that in the back of my mind, that they sort of take it on as like a nature project. As well as it is meant for us to, you can see in the lower left that people from Tilley Street, we have a direct connection all the way across to the football field to we're having them put in an ADA ramps on both sides so that you can make it all the way across and go to a game.
Great, thank you. I was hopeful for all that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, other questions? Chris, I do, Michael Jones here, I do have one other question. What is the
Yes, sir.
rough approximate timeline for the completion of the Zach Scott Great Lake?
Sure, this project is more delayed than others. It's only because the site is currently being used as part of construction for the school site, so it's dependent on the completion of the school. Right now, it's not anticipated, we're kind of, wrapped up with RCDs, we're sitting on it right now. It's not anticipated for this to go under construction, or actually to go out to bid until June of next year.
And so if it goes for bid June, so we're talking.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
2024?
probably about 9 to 12 months construction period.
Okay, so 9 to 11 months construction. Okay, so basically we're talking sometime 2024.
Or 2023.
Oh,
Or, I'm sorry, 2024.
Yeah, okay, all right. Commissioners, other questions? Yes, Rick?
Chris, this is Rick Ryan. So the trail that runs behind, to the east of the school, I guess that's the best way to put it.
Correct.
Is there any sort of evening lighting? I like the bollards, I think that you had by the pavilions. Is there any lighting, let's say, security lighting for the evening trail walkers along that provided?
No, there is not. And I don't have an answer for you on that one, whether there should be or not. I'd imagine for most events, with the school, that's probably, if there's gonna be an event with the school, it's probably relatively well lit, as well as the parking lot for the school, but there are no lights along there. You did just mention the bollards, by the way, and I wanted to point out that the bollards that we were showing there are not light bollards. They're actually just there to prevent people from driving in. There's some remnant driveways at the end of the streets from section 11, that look like they would be driveways into the park itself.
Thank you.
Commissioners, other questions? Yes, Christopher?
Yeah, Chris, this is Commissioner Jackson again. I have a adjacent question to Rick's about that area. Is it right that between the school and then Troublemaker Studios, that'll all be fenced condition for that entire stretch?
It is currently fenced already, and it's not the most attractive fence. I know that they are looking into potential upgrades to the fence. But that's on the Troublemaker Studio side. We are trying to provide as much plant material buffering and also planting on that fence. It's a chain link fence right now, to kind of screen that off. There is an odd spot you can see on the right-hand side. It's pointing to an area that says existing access road. And that is in our property, but they have an easement to drive over that portion of the property and access that back parking lot, which they're currently using just for storage. So that's why it's been left open over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my question is steered towards safety, really. If, there aren't gonna be very good eyes and ears on this site back here in times of vulnerability, like in the evenings and early mornings, are there any special or kind of additional safety precautions, given technology or other, that are being considered for this area?
Not that we have discussed, no.
And it looks about how many linear feet is in this sort of, for lack of a better term, like kind of fenced canyon?
Ooh, you got me on that one.
Yeah,
I
it looks
couldn't
like
tell
it's
you that.
Yeah, maybe a couple of football fields worth.
I would say 300, 1, 2, 3, probably about 1,200 feet, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's something that would be worth exploration, because that's a big commitment, 5 minutes in either, or 2.5 minutes walking in either direction. And yeah, it seems like that could be a place for, unfortunately, predator action.
Certainly.
Commissioners, other questions on this topic?
This is Ken Rossinet.
Yes,
Thank
Ken.
you for this presentation. Sort of along Chris's lines, I agree with what he was concerned with, and maybe, I don't know if it would be appropriate to consider like emergency phones or something like that, you know, in these areas. Because I know that without lighting, it does get dark on some of these trails.
Mhm.
So, thank you.
Okay, sir, certainly something to talk about with Carl, yeah.
Yes, Kathy, you have a question?
Yeah, this is Kathy Sickle. Like, I just want to say that like none of our trail has lighting, which is not ideal. But I know some of it's for what is it, dark skies?
Dark sky.
And we have had people with visibility issues request lighting along the trails, like really small lighting. That could be something to look into, at least for the future. But yeah, it can get pretty creepy out there.
Alrighty.
Yes, Courtney.
Hi, Chris. Yeah, along the same line, well, I know you know this, we can do, protect the skies and still have adequate lighting. The proximity to all those kids, I know that AISD has security, and I would imagine they'd be available just like they are on any of the other campuses. But there is some wooded area around that side. A lot of the other trail faces on streets and more public areas.
Correct.
I'm wondering about some of the safety concern. I think at least there should be a conversation with AISD about what their plans are for the area, and perhaps some collaboration with them about some additional safety features.
Okay.
Commissioners, other questions? Hearing none. Is anyone signed up to provide any testimony on this topic? Well, this is, I should point out, thanks to the city staff, that this presentation will be posted to the city website in the very near future. So if you want to have an opportunity to look at it a little more closely, you'll be able to do that at the City of Austin website under the Miller Commission. And Chris, again, on behalf of our commission, I want to thank you for this presentation. I hope you have a quick and speedy recovery, and if there are any additional changes or updates to the plans for the Greenway, please feel free to let us know, and we can provide an opportunity to share any updates, particularly on some of the questions that were raised about safety features in that area near the school. I guess because of recent events, we're all a little more sensitive about safety around elementary and middle schools. But this looks like a great opportunity to enhance the Miller vision with this greenway and the interior of the project. So thank you, and I hope you have a pleasant evening.
Thank you.
Let's see. The next item on our agenda is also park related. It will be an update from Jana McCann on the new park that's going to go in section 11. As a reminder for those watching, section 11 is one of the last large undeveloped sections of Miller that will include homes and other amenities. And we're looking forward to hearing this update on, I guess it'll be one of the last parks that will be developed for the project. So, welcome back to the commission. It's been a couple of years, but we always look forward to hearing your thoughts and your analysis of this particular project.
I've really overanalyzed this one.
That's okay.
Okay, well, no, I'm really excited to be back here and very excited to be in charge of the design of another Great Miller Park. And what's, I think, so amazing about Miller is that the parks are very varied. There's different types of parks. There's a lot of different functions going on there. So we kind of had to ask ourselves at the beginning of this one, what does this park need? What does it want to be? What's appropriate? What's missing maybe for Miller? Which is kind of hard because Miller's got a lot of wonderful amenities and activities in the parks. And so I think, okay, so we are located, it's a neighborhood park right in the center. Sorry if I'm seeing that one, but of section 11, which is the newest and last neighborhood to be built, which is very much under construction right now. So it's the southeast corner of the whole project with the southeast greenway wrapping around, and Chris's project that he just explained to you is on the north edge of the neighborhood. So this park is actually not that far from John Gaines Park, which you see on the left side of the screen, and not that far from Southeast Greenway. So this is a lucky neighborhood to have all that access. And so one of the things that we thought about a lot is, so one thing that we thought was sort of missing that could be really a wonderful addition is having a more sort of plant forward kind of park. And what that means, a place where you could feel sort of almost more surrounded and a little bit cuddled by nature. And at the same time, we wanted to be able to have a place that could really support like family gatherings or even spontaneous gatherings, like meet somebody, one of your neighbors at the park. So really support a gamut of different types of encounters, events, etc. So this park is pretty tiny. It's only about 200 feet by 200 feet. So it would fit in that space that Chris was pointing out that I think Corky was asking about entirely. So it's very, very small, but I think there's actually a lot of opportunity and a lot going on with it. So yeah, this is just a Google view. Can y'all even see this? It looks so dark. Okay, of where the park is located in the center of this new neighborhood under construction. And I'm gonna sort of sit on this slide a bit and kind of talk through it. If I walk over there, would you be able to hear me?
Do this one.
Okay.
Jana?
Jana, can you do this one?
This one's closer to us.
Is he?
I just can't see.
Jana can't see that.
This one shows better. Alicia, if I get over here, can you hear me okay?
Uh-huh, yeah.
First to be able to catch the microphone, the sound.
Okay, so the microphone is in one place. Okay, bummer. I'll try to just remember to point things out. Okay, so this, to orient you, at the top is Chenault Street or Soren Street, right? Sorry, Soren Street, and then at the bottom is Chenault Street. So this is Taniguchi Street and Margarita Street. So those are our four different street conditions. This site naturally slopes down sort of at a diagonal, starting the high point is where you see that pavilion structure in the northwest corner. And it slopes down about 6 or 7 feet to the far southeast corner. So we have a little bit of topography to work with, even though it looks quite flat if you go out there. So one of the big moves, I think, and the thoughts about this notion of garden space and being surrounded by nature, which I think was really important. And many times when I'm in Miller Park, I feel like I'm right at the sidewalk street level. I'm not away enough, at least. So this was an opportunity to create more like a refuge type space in the southern half of the park. So it's almost exactly half, and it has a pathway system that cuts through Taniguchi Street in the midpoint of Taniguchi up to the northeast corner of Margarita and Soren Street. So that whole southern half is really slightly depressed, at the most about 3 to 3.5 feet down from the sidewalk level surrounding it. And as you're walking in from Taniguchi Street, and then you take a turn to the right and come into the sort of lawn space, that whole area around the lawn is like carved out, and there's what we're calling a sloped thicket around it. And this was an inspiration, at least for me. I love to visit gardens and parks and other places, and I went to Lisbon to see their botanical gardens, and one of the things that was so wonderful is you go into the space and you also sink down and you have a walkway, kind of a sinuous sort of beautiful walkway. You're completely surrounded by plants. And that's just a lovely feeling of being completely away from sort of the road and urban areas. Now, it's not some way far down, it's about 3.5 feet, 3 feet, 3.5 feet. And there's still access points actually at each of the two corners, as you can see, the two southern corners to get into the park. One's a little accessible path, trail, and on the other side is a little stone stepping stairway to get down. So, and there's plenty of overlooks around the southern edge where we've carved in, and I'll show you some images of that, sort of overlooks with benches. So being on the street around there and being able to sort of promenade around the park is definitely a good thing. We've done a double row of trees the whole way around, so that being just walking your dog or taking a walk is you're gonna be in this shaded, sheltered area at the street level, and then you can overlook into the park. So that's kind of the southern half, and there's some nice sort of lake park style benches in there to sit under 3 large specimen trees that will move in there. They're probably already fairly mature, giving that southern half of the lawn, that lawn space, a really nice character of already sort of feeling like it's been inhabited by plant life. So going up though to the northwest, I kind of think of this as a yin and yang park, because the yin is down in the sort of sunken area, and the yang is where you do want to yell out, hey y'all, come on over we're having a grilling moment, a hot dog, come over, or an espresso martini that some of our friends like. So there's a very tiny pavilion, and I mean small. It's an open air pavilion. You see the plan up here. That just has a little restroom and a storage room. Otherwise, it's completely open, has this lovely butterfly roof. Actually, we're using the same structural engineer that previous project showed. They were brilliant, and we've done a lot of the structures that you see around Miller. So it's sort of part of kind of the language of Miller Parks that we're trying to do. And in doing so, we chose also the Pecos red sandstone as the cladding material for the pavilion structure. But what's nice about the pavilion, it kind of creates a more extroverted space right on the corner, so you can kind of walk right in. But it gives onto a fairly nice, almost the same size vine-covered terrace, which are steel structure that's sort of formed, and that my inspiration for that was actually the Madrid Botanical Gardens, the Royal Botanical Gardens there. But that really simple thin steel sort of vaulted structure, so very elegant but very spare. And on top of that, we're talking about using like a Spanish black grape. So one of the hopes is that we can have a little bit more edible stuff going on, blooming stuff, fruiting stuff, but you have to be careful and always balance that with maintenance and freeze hardiness. So we've been sort of back and forth in trying to choose the most robust plants. But, want to have that sort of sense of a garden, of plants that change over the seasons and kind of bring delight and bring fruit even. So on the northeast corner on the right upper side is really a very simple grove of live oaks. And that's really just to make a place that can be used for hanging out, shade. In the middle of it, you see a large table that we're calling the community table. So the image for that is like, this is a cool place. It's kind of like you go to a vineyard or a farm and everybody has a giant moment of celebrating with 30 people together the harvest, or something like that, a harvest table, I think other people have called it. So that element is over there, and then along that sort of curving east-west pathway is a dry creek. So the site is lifted up on the north side. That dry creek is a depressed area that actually will help to bring the drainage in and funnel it to plants, and then create a really interesting edge and separation from the southern, more protected side of the park. I think that's all the features I can see that I need to describe. Oh yes, one important thing, you see this big circular feature. Call this a panhole, which is a word I've never heard before, but our Chinese landscape architect found it, and it's really a naturally occurring depression crust element in geology is usually like a limestone that's scoured out, and that actually holds water, but it's larger than a tinaja or something. And so that's actually accepting the roof water and the drainage, because the butterfly roof is shaped like this, and it's spouting over into this panhole, which then allows water to sort of come down into the dry creek. So I think in terms of rain, if we ever have rain again, it'll be a really interesting feature to even be in the pavilion during a rainstorm and watch that action, how that water comes down and feeds everything. So those are kind of the key spaces in the park, which is a lot for a little park, I think. But we can go to the next slide. And this is just an overview perspective of what it would look like. You see the butterfly roof in the foreground, and then the north, so that's the northwest corners, and we're looking over the sort of lawn space and the sort of slightly sunken garden area. You see the grove on the left corner. So this is just a blow up of the plan view of the pavilion. Again, there it's like 1,000 square feet. It's for 1,200 square feet, pretty tiny. But the terrace below will sort of amplify the space, and so we're really linking those two spaces so that they flow together. So you can imagine this could be, you could have a catered event. I think there is a possibility to reserve this place for small gatherings. You know, the caveat is I think it needs to be small. This is in the middle of a little neighborhood. It's a quieter space. No brass bands. Or maybe on the 4th of July. Okay. And this is a view taken from the dry creek. There's a little bridge that carries you over the dry creek, and then up the main north-south pathway to Soren Street. You catch a view of the pavilion with the red pecas, larger blocks of that stone being used as a veneer, and then you can see where that roof will funnel over and spill water into the panhole. And so there's a notion of this stepped stone wall that sort of terraces back and kind of holds the land up, so that the terrace and pavilion are on the same sort of plateau level. Let's see. This is a view as if you're right at the corner, or the southeast corner of the arbor trellis, and looking out over the dry creek. You can see the dry creek is down below, but the rocks on the edge of it, and then the east-west path, and then the park space beyond that. This is just an example of one of the little overlook bench areas that's on Chenal Street. There's another similar one on Margarita Street. And on this street, we have basically kind of rain gardens on both sides of the pathway, or we call them recessed planting areas, because in the strictest sense, they're not, using biofiltration media, but they're doing the work of collecting a bit of that water and feeding the bald cypresses that are along that edge. So this is just more technically about the materials of the building, showing the different elevations. There will be a little alcove, see on the top left, where we'll have drinking fountains, and now we've actually added a little bench there. But you can see it's very open air and very light. The roof is kind of feeling like it's floating with this very solid, rounded stone base. These, in terms of landscape, this is really fun working with Board and Car Design Group, who don't have a lot of experience doing big public projects. They're really great, especially in garden design, I think, and just the sort of more boutique landscapes. So this is just some of the imagery for the streetscape, showing the street trees, and all of the planting areas where at the sidewalk level are really pretty richly planted with ground covers, cactus, these kinds of sage, etc. So there really isn't, the only turf area is really in that central lawn area. And these are images for what we're doing in the northwest quadrant with the figs and grapes, chinkapin oak, and I think Chris said on the for growth room adapted. So imagery from the sloped thicket. So the feeling there is we have a perimeter sort of retaining wall around that southern half against which we're going to mound the dirt so that when you're in that space, you really feel like you're protected by a fairly dense growth of these kinds of plants. And finally, this is the last slide. We're trying to, we're working on detailing right now what we're calling the step to stone wall that you saw on the dry creek. That actually allows for about a 3.5 foot level change. So it's probably going to be a stacked limestone wall, probably using more cubic units than these smaller units here. But the idea is to create a lot of topography and interest and have the pathways kind of move you around a lot and kind of hopefully get a sense that it's a bigger space than it actually is. So that's the presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, I see you've got several questions. We'll start with Corky.
Janet, thank you, that was a wonderful presentation. I feel so comforted and chilled. I just want to go sit in there right now. It's a delightful use of that space. I had a couple of questions. Is this the Delco Park? What's the name of this park? Do we have a name to it? No?
I have a working name.
Still working on names. I remember at first you talked about the southeast and southwest corner having steps to get in. And I saw some other steps. I know you've done the ADA thing, but how do people who are in wheelchairs or baby carriages, how do they get in?
Well, there's accessible entries along 3 sides.
3
4
sides, okay.
4 entrances actually when you get to the main view.
Okay. I saw the one at the bottom, I think.
You can
Yeah.
come in this way.
Uh-huh.
The top corner there, this actually has steps along it. So that you can come in.
Come down
There's
that one.
a pavilion in the southwest.
That
It's
corner.
handicapped accessible. And that means actually under 5% slope, so we don't have to have rails or anything. So it's just a quiet little sneaky path to get down.
Okay. And no octopus?
We've got to, kind of save some money here. They're hard to feed. No, but I think, hopefully the art is the garden.
Yeah. I just wonder if there's any plans for a public art piece in there at all.
No, but I think we could commission one. I know where to put it.
Where would that be?
Right here.
Oh, yeah.
This is sort of stacked boulders, little, what is called a peekaboo, sort of peekaboo play space. So this is more what is in the order of what we call nature play generally. There isn't a playground, there's no swing set. But if you're a kid, there's gonna be tons to climb on and run around and explore. In fact, we imagine that kids especially, will be in the dry creek and scrambling up what we're now calling the ramble up to the panhole. So I think there's lots of scrambling, lots of up and down, and hopefully safe scrambling.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rick, you have a question?
More of a comment. I do like a lot of this. I mean, it's all of it. But you're on Taniguchi Street, and you're talking about botanical gardens, and it might be a little kitschy, but to maybe spill out in something new, because
The relationship with the Taniguchi Gardens in
Yeah.
Zilker, well, that was a huge inspiration for the park. And so you see a lot of Mr. Taniguchi did a lot of that work and that rock work and creating that sort of topography with it and creating little waterfalls and bridges. And so we are totally in love with that, and it's sort of a Japanese Texas kind of garden, I
So,
think. So,
again, I know not water because that's much more of an issue these days, but to find some place that you could just sort of spill it in rocks or something, Miller would be kind of a cool reference.
So we can do that. There's a thing in the gardens called the mother tree too, which would be kind of an interesting idea to play on. But there's a lot of paving that we could do some sort of specialty homage to Mr. Taniguchi.
Okay.
same thing, we're so excited about it being on Taniguchi Street. Thanks.
Commissioners, other questions? Yes, Kathy?
Just a comment, I love it, it's fantastic, thank you.
Yes, Ken, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you very much, and I actually, I love it as well. Quick question around the, where the building's gonna be. So you showed about, water faucets and things of that nature. Is there any public restrooms in this facility or not?
It's that little rectangular square there, right, and so there's a door that's visible from Taniguchi Street into it.
Okay.
And then water drinking fountains are in sort of an alcove that faces the terrace with the vine arbor over it.
Thank you very much.
Commissioners, other questions?
We're actually getting ready to take it to bid next month. And so hopefully we can start construction right before the end of the year if all goes well. And we can negotiate a contract that's in the budget price. So I think we've allotted about 18 months for construction. So that means by maybe June 2024, somewhere in there, we would be opening the park. Is that right?
I'll clarify more.
Okay.
Okay, so that would be great. Is anyone signed up to provide any public testimony on this topic? All right. Well, this is a wonderful park, and we'll ask, I guess, probably next what the protocol is for people to suggest names for the park. Although, Corky, I thought that was if that turned out to be, that would be a wonderful suggestion, but I'm sure there's some others as well. So, this looks like it's gonna be a wonderful and very unique park, and as we were saying before to Chris, if there are any changes or updates to it, we'd love to hear those, but, this looks like a very unique park, and I think it'll stand out, in a project that has several unique, amenities, so we look forward to its successful completion.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the monthly developer update. Brian?
I have no slides, so it's gonna be kind of moody in here, I guess. Hello, Commissioners. Again, for the record, I'm Brian Beliezel. I'm Vice President of Marketing and Communications for the Miller Development. Always a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Before I go into my formal remarks, I wanted to just clarify a couple things that were mentioned during these wonderful presentations. First off, we will be sharing, there will be a notice in the newsletter on Friday, with kind of a summary of these two parts, and then links to the presentations, so that all Miller residents can get that. I'm more than happy to share that with you all as well. So if you've got constituencies, in other neighborhoods, et cetera, to be able to share that, we certainly want to get the word out and share these beautiful parks. As it relates to the trail behind the school, I have not been in the formal discussions, but I know that the city, Catellus, and AIC has had numerous conversations about the safety concerns for that stretch. Fortunately, we still have some time to figure all of that out, whether it's lighting or other security measures that can be added there. Just to clarify on some of the timing, it's my understanding from Carl Paulson that with the park that Jana just presented, as she mentioned, going to bid here later this year, in the fourth quarter of this year, we're anticipating probably a 12-month timeline is kind of an average for both projects. And as Chris mentioned in his presentation, that won't go to bid till probably the third quarter or the fourth quarter of next year. Also, then will be kind of a 12-month timeline. And just a reminder, that's because AISD is using that space for their staging area for the building of the middle school itself. So we still have some time to figure out some of the questions that they appreciate you bringing that up. I'll make sure that gets back to the team. We can have more discussions on that. And then Commissioner Hilliard, you asked about the access of school students being able to use our parks. Again, I don't believe any final agreement has been made between Catellis or the POA or the city with AISD, but it's my understanding that some of the facilities of AISD will be available to the public, and I would assume, and again, this is just me making an assumption, that conversely, the AISD and then the school and the teachers will be able to use the public parks, just like really any other stakeholder surrounding the community is able to enjoy Miller's Park. So I just wanted to clarify a couple of things there. Speaking of parks, just moving forward on a couple items, you may be wondering what's going on with the Tower Plaza, and we will be doing a community meeting. We haven't set that date yet. It'll probably be sometime this fall. We probably will be doing that as an online meeting just because COVID still continues to be an issue. I do know that the design team went to the Landmark Commission recently and gave a presentation. That's part of the general process because the tower itself has been designated as a historic landmark. And so there's more information to be shared with the community. We'll have more information for you in terms of when we get that scheduled. But again, it'll probably be sometime this fall. And then also speaking of parks, the Southeast Greenway will officially open to the public on Thursday. The fencing is actually starting coming down. I see there's some happy people in the audience, which is great. That fencing includes around the skate park and the cycle pump track area as well. There's no formal event for that. When it opens on Thursday, we'll be doing more of a formal event sometime in the fall when things hopefully will cool down a little bit. So we'll do a couple of demonstrations and have some activities and some live music and celebrate and kind of another unique element to Miller's park system. But it will be open beginning on Thursday, not just the skate park and the cycle tracks, but also the rest of the park, including probably about a mile extension of the trail, and then how that Southeast Greenway extends to the pond area, which of course has become such a magnet for the Audubon Society and others who are interested in wading and migratory birds. Also speaking of trails, as part of the work to complete the Southeast Greenway, the team, and I believe it's RVI who worked on that particular part, has added mile markers along the trail. You'll see in some parts of the older part of the trail system, at least the major loop around Miller, there is a 1.25, 1.5 small little mile marker sign along the loop. And so they're adding to that in the Southeast Greenway. I think they've replaced some of the ones and added more in some other areas. So if you're along Philomena Street, for example, there's one by Kirby Lane as it continues. The trailhead officially is in the Northwest Greenway. And I'm not sure if they've been added yet or not. I meant to go by and I forgot, just didn't get a chance today. We're adding trail maps, large trail maps at the Northwest Greenway, and then also near Tom Miller and Zach Scott, closer to the skate park. There will be a trail map for all visitors to understand what the trail system is for the community. So if that's not installed now, it will be installed relatively soon. Switching gears, I wanted to share some information about some new businesses that have opened. You're probably very familiar that since we last met, Origin has opened. It's 120 rooms, 5 stories, has a gym, valet parking, gathering spaces, free Wi-Fi, exercise gear. It's very dog friendly if you've seen any of the news coverage. And then of course their restaurant has also opened, Blue Lacy, which is named after the state dog of Texas, which I didn't know about till Blue Lacy came to Miller. It's a very casual all-day restaurant, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner with indoor and outdoor dining. And they say it's a fresh take on yesterday's greatest hits. And just as an example of some of the menu items, they have beef short rib chili, chicken and waffle kebabs, avocado toast bruschetta, and that they even have a dog menu as part of their dog-friendly efforts. I have not been, but I'm going next week and I'm looking forward to it. A couple other businesses have opened. Barata House is opened in the Regional Retail Center next to Yoso Cool Yogurt. They serve a variety of toasted paninis, bowls, and pastas, all featuring burrata, which is a very creamy version, similar to mozzarella cheese, but has kind of a creamy interior. So that just recently opened. And then I don't know when it opened. The Bath and Body Works moved from the Hancock Center location at HEB to Miller, kind of next to Old Navy. I know they're having some, I keep actually going by there, and there's, the sign that says they've got some AC issues, so they haven't maybe officially opened yet, but they're, stocked up and I think ready to open, any day now. And then Marufuku Ramen, which I presented to you before, is one of the businesses that's coming to, Aldrich Street, specifically in the Alpha Building. They're gearing up for a mid-September, opening, so we're actually gonna be meeting with them here shortly as a marketing team to kind of help them, get the word out about their ramen place, which a lot of people are very excited about. And then lastly, just wanted to mention that we do have, some dates set for the fall KUTX Rock the Park series. Those dates are all Fridays, September 23rd, October 21st, and November 11th. And again, these will all take place in the Lake Park Amphitheater. We're also planning on doing, movies in the park again, this fall. We'll have dates for you, probably